The first time Zelda Jenkins stepped into a saloon at 17 and won every card game without even trying. Her father knew they had to leave town before morning. Now, at 22, she had perfected the art of invisibility, hiding in plain sight behind a plain dress, downcast eyes, and hands that pretended to fumble whenever anyone watched too closely. Las Lunas, New Mexico Territory, in the summer of 1882, was supposed to be just another temporary stop in a long line of temporary stops. The dusty settlement sat alongside the Rio Grande, a place where cattle drives pass through, and most people were too busy with their own struggles to notice one more quiet woman who kept house for her aging father. Zelda had learned to make herself small, unremarkable, forgettable. She could calculate complex mathematics in her head faster than most men could write the numbers down. She could draw with such precision that her sketches looked like photographs. She could shoot the wings off a fly at 50 paces, read and write in 4 languages, and play the piano like an angel sent from heaven itself. But nobody in Las Lunas knew any of that, and Zelda intended to keep it that way. Her father, Thomas Jenkins, had been a professor back in Boston before his gambling debts, and her mother's death had sent them running west. He was weaker now, his cough growing worse with each passing month, and Zelda spent her days doing laundry for the townsfolk, keeping her head down, earning just enough to keep them fed. She scrubbed clothes until her hands were raw, hung them to dry in the brutal sun, and never once complained. The other women in town thought her simple, perhaps even slow-witted, and that suited Zelda just fine. The trouble started on a Tuesday afternoon in late July when Ryder Thompson rode into town with a string of horses and a smile that could have charmed the thorns off a cactus. He was a horse trader, 25 years old, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of good whiskey. He set up a temporary corral at the edge of town, and within hours, every man with money to spare was examining his stock. Zelda paid him no mind. She had learned long ago that handsome men were just another form of attention, and attention was the last thing she needed. But Ryder Thompson was not like most men. He noticed things others missed. He saw the way Zelda's eyes tracked the mathematical patterns in the fence posts as she walked past his corral. He watched her fingers twitch, as if solving an invisible equation when one of his horses broke free, and he had to calculate the angle to cut it off. Most importantly, he saw the moment she forgot herself, reaching out to calm a skittish mare with such natural grace and understanding that the animal settled immediately. And then the way she caught herself, dropping her hand and shuffling away as if she had done something wrong. "That was mighty kind of you, miss," he called after her, but Zelda was already hurrying down the street, her basket of laundry clutched tight against her chest. Ryder asked about her at the general store that evening. The shopkeeper, a portly man named Chester Mills, shook his head with something like pity. "That is Zelda Jenkins. Lives with her father on the east side, does laundry, quiet as a mouse. Nothing much going on in that head if you know what I mean. Sweet girl, though, would not hurt a fly." But Ryder had seen her eyes, and he knew intelligence when he saw it. He had grown up with 3 sisters who were smarter than half the men in Texas combined, and his mother had taught him to value brains over beauty, though he suspected Zelda Jenkins had plenty of both hiding under that faded calico dress and severe bun. The next day, Ryder brought a shirt to Zelda's door. Her father answered, coughing into a handkerchief, his face gray. "Mr. Jenkins, I am Ryder Thompson. I am wondering if your daughter takes in laundry." Thomas Jenkins regarded him with watery eyes that still held a spark of the sharp professor he had once been. "She does. Come back tomorrow afternoon." "Actually, sir, I was hoping I might discuss the particulars with her directly. I have some specific requirements." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. Thomas studied him for a long moment, then called over his shoulder. "Zelda, customer here wants to talk to you about his washing." Zelda appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. She kept her eyes on the floor. "Yes, sir." "I've got this shirt here," Ryder said, holding up a perfectly clean shirt that clearly did not need washing. "But I am particular about how it is done. My mother had a special way, and I was hoping you might be able to match it." Zelda finally looked up at him, and for just a second, he saw annoyance flash across her face before she schooled it back to blank politeness. So she was not simple at all. She knew exactly what he was doing. "I wash clothes the same as anyone else, sir. Nothing special about it." "Maybe you could show me your process. I would be happy to pay for your time." Thomas Jenkins coughed again, this time harder, and Zelda's expression shifted to genuine concern. "Father, you should lie down." "I am fine, daughter." But he was not fine, and when he swayed on his feet, Ryder stepped forward instinctively, catching the older man's arm. "Let me help him, Miss Jenkins." For a moment, Zelda looked like she might refuse, but her father was already leaning on Ryder, and she had little choice. She led them inside to a small, neat room where a narrow bed was pushed against one wall. The house was humble but clean, with books stacked everywhere. Ryder noticed titles in Latin, Greek, French, and German, advanced mathematics texts, philosophy treatises, and medical journals. Not the library of a simple laundrywoman. Once Thomas was settled on the bed, breathing heavily, Zelda turned to Ryder with her eyes now sharp and clear. "Thank you for your help. You can go now. Your father needs a doctor. We cannot afford a doctor. I will pay for it." "We do not need charity." Her voice was firm, and Ryder could hear the pride underneath, the same pride that was keeping her father alive through sheer will. "It is not charity. I genuinely need someone to care for my horses while I am in town, someone with a real understanding of animals. I saw how you handled my mare yesterday. That was not luck, that was skill. I will pay you fair wages, and you can use that to pay for the doctor yourself." Zelda stared at him, and he could see her mind working, weighing the offer, looking for the trap. "Why would you do that?" "Because my horses deserve the best care, and because your father deserves a doctor, and because I have a feeling you are a lot more capable than you let on." Behind them, Thomas Jenkins began to cough again, this time bringing up blood into his handkerchief. Zelda made her decision. "Fine. I will work with your horses, but just until my father is better." Ryder smiled. "Deal." Dr. Samuel Whitmore arrived within the hour, a stern man with capable hands and no bedside manner. He examined Thomas Jenkins while Zelda stood in the corner, her arms wrapped around herself. Ryder had stayed, leaning against the wall near the door, and though Zelda had given him several pointed looks, she had not ordered him out. "Consumption," Dr. Whitmore announced finally. "Advanced stage. He needs rest, good food, and mountain air if you can manage it. There is a sanitarium up in the foothills, but it costs money." "How much money?" Zelda asked. The number the doctor quoted might as well have been $1 million. Zelda's face went pale, but she nodded. "Thank you, doctor. I will figure something out. After Dr. Whitmore left, Ryder turned to Zelda. "The offer still stands. Work for me, and I will pay you enough to send him to that sanitarium. That would take months of work. I am planning to stay in the area through the fall. I have got a ranch about 20 miles north where I breed horses. I came to town to sell some of the yearlings, but I will be back and forth. If you are as good as I think you are, the job is yours for as long as you need it." Zelda looked at her father, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep, his breathing raspy and labored. "I do not understand why you are doing this. Maybe I just like helping people. Nobody just likes helping people, not without wanting something in return. Ryder pushed off from the wall and walked toward the door. You are right. I do want something in return. I want you to stop pretending to be something you are not. I want you to use those skills I can see you hiding. And I want to know why a woman who clearly has the intelligence of 10 scholars combined is scrubbing other people's dirty laundry in a dusty New Mexico town. He left before she could respond, but as he walked back toward his corral, he felt her eyes on his back and he smiled. The next morning, Zelda arrived at the corral just after dawn. She had pulled her hair back in a practical braid, and she wore a split riding skirt that was old but well made. Ryder was already up, feeding the horses their morning grain. You came, he said, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. I gave my word. Zelda's voice was neutral, but she was looking at the horses with undisguised interest. What do you need me to do? First, I want you to tell me what you see when you look at that bay gelding in the far corner. Zelda walked over to the fence, studying the horse Ryder had indicated. It was a beautiful animal, well-muscled and alert, but Ryder watched as her eyes traced the angle of its legs, the set of its shoulders, the way it held its head. He is favoring his left front hoof, she said finally. Not much, but enough that he is uncomfortable. Probably a stone bruise or an abscess. He is also anxious, which means he is in pain but trying not to show it. If you are planning to sell him, you should not until that heals. And that mare next to him is pregnant, about 4 months along, which you probably already know. But she is also smart enough that she is going to be difficult to train, unless whoever works with her treats her with respect. Ryder felt something settle in his chest, a recognition that was almost like coming home. You can see all that from here. I can see what is there. Most people just do not look. Zelda turned to him, and for the first time there was no guard in her expression, just honest curiosity. Did you really mean it, about wanting me to stop hiding? Every word. Why? Because hiding that kind of talent is like keeping a lamp under a basket. It does not make sense and it is a waste. Ryder walked over to stand beside her at the fence. My mother used to say that God gives us gifts and it is an insult to him if we do not use them. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was. She died 3 years ago. Ryder's voice went quiet. But before she did, she made me promise that I would never let anyone dim their own light just because other people could not handle the brightness. I think she would have liked you. Zelda looked away, but not before Ryder saw the sheen of tears in her eyes. My mother used to say something similar. She said I was born under a bright star and that I should never be ashamed of it. But then she died and my father lost everything, and we learned that being bright just makes you a target. What happened? For a moment, Ryder thought she would not answer. Then, in a quiet voice, she told him. About growing up in Boston, the daughter of a respected professor. About her mother, a botanist who had defied convention to pursue her studies. About how Zelda had inherited both their brilliant minds and their stubborn refusal to pretend otherwise. About the men who had tried to court her, not for herself, but for the prestige of having a clever wife they could show off like a trained dog. About her father's gambling, the debts, the men who came in the night. About her mother's death in a carriage accident that may not have been an accident at all. About running west, from town to town, and learning the hard way that a woman with too much intelligence was viewed with either suspicion or greed, never simple acceptance. So I learned to hide, Zelda finished. I learned to make myself small and quiet and unremarkable, and it worked. We have been here for 6 months and nobody has bothered us. Nobody has tried to cheat my father or marry me for my skills. We have been safe. But you have been miserable, Ryder said softly. Zelda met his eyes. Better miserable than dead. What if you did not have to choose? What if you could be yourself and also be safe? That is not how the world works. Maybe not. But what if we could make it work that way, just in this little corner of New Mexico? Zelda shook her head, but she was almost smiling. You are an optimist, Mr. Thompson. Ryder. And yes, I suppose I am, but I am also practical. I have got 20 horses here and I need help managing them. You have got skills that would make that job easier. I will pay you fair wages, enough to send your father to that sanitarium. In exchange, I want you to be yourself. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just you, exactly as you are, as bright and brilliant as God made you. And when people in town notice, when they start asking questions, let them ask. I will make it clear you are under my protection. Zelda laughed, a short, bitter sound. Your protection? You have been in this town for 2 days. True. But I have got a reputation in this territory, and I have got friends in high places. My family owns one of the largest ranches in Texas. My brother is a federal marshal. My sister is married to a territorial judge. I am not bragging, just stating facts. If anyone gives you trouble, they will have to go through me, and then they will have to go through my family. And trust me, nobody wants that. For a long moment, Zelda just stared at him. Then, slowly, she said, You said you wanted to know why I am here, scrubbing laundry in Las Lunas. Now I want to know why you are really doing this. Nobody is this kind without a reason. Ryder had known this question was coming, and he had prepared himself to be honest. When I was 18, I fell in love with a girl named Caroline. She was beautiful and smart and funny, but she always played dumb around other people because her father told her that men did not like women who were too clever. I begged her to just be herself, but she was too afraid. She married a rich banker who treated her like a pretty ornament, and last I heard, she was miserable, living in a big house in St. Louis, hosting parties where she pretends to be interested in needlework and gossip. He paused, making sure Zelda was listening. I do not want to see another bright woman dim her own light. And maybe, selfishly, I am hoping that if I can help you shine, it will make up a little bit for not being able to help Caroline. It was the truth, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was that Ryder had felt something shift inside him the moment he saw Zelda calm that skittish mare. Recognition. Possibility. Something that felt dangerously close to fate. But that was too much to say out loud, especially to a woman who had every reason to distrust men with smooth words and big promises. Zelda seemed to sense there was more he was not saying, but she let it go. Instead, she turned back to the horses and said, All right, Ryder Thompson. I will work for you, and I will stop hiding, at least when it is just the two of us. But in town, I am still the quiet laundry woman. I am not ready to give that up yet. Fair enough, Ryder said. One step at a time. They shook hands on it, and Ryder felt the calluses on her palms, the strength in her grip. This was no delicate flower. This was a woman who had worked hard and survived harder, and he felt a surge of admiration so strong it almost knocked him sideways. The days that followed fell into an easy rhythm. Zelda would arrive at dawn, and she and Ryder would work with the horses until the heat of midday drove them into the shade. He would watch as she handled the animals with a combination of science and intuition that took his breath away. She could read their body language like a book, anticipate their reactions, soothe their fears. She was also unafraid to get dirty, mucking out stalls, checking hooves, mixing feed with careful precision. In those morning hours, she talked more freely than she probably had in years. She told him about her studies in Boston, the private tutors her parents had hired, the books she had devoured. She explained principles of animal behavior and mathematics, her eyes lighting up in a way that made Ryder's chest feel tight. She sketched out designs for a better corral system, improvements to the water trough, a training technique she had read about in a French veterinary journal, and Ryder listened. He asked questions. He implemented her suggestions and marveled when they worked even better than she had predicted. He praised her openly, refusing to let her downplay her own intelligence, and slowly, cautiously, Zelda began to unfold like a flower that had been locked in darkness finally reaching toward the sun. In town, she was still quiet, still careful. She still did laundry for the local families, and she still kept her eyes down when men passed on the street. But sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, Ryder would catch her smiling to herself, a small, secret smile that made him want to kiss her breathless. Not that he would. Not yet. She was just beginning to trust him, and he was not about to ruin that by pushing too fast. But God help him, he was falling in love with her. With her brilliant mind, her cautious heart, her dry sense of humor, the way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating, the way she laughed when one of the horses did something unexpectedly clever. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Zelda arrived at the corral looking troubled. "My father is worse," she said without preamble. "Dr. Whitmore says if we do not get him to that sanitarium soon, he will not last the winter." Ryder did not hesitate. "I will take you to the bank today. I have got the money set aside. We can arrange for his transport by the end of the week." "I have not earned that much yet. Consider it an advance on future work. I am going to need your help for a long time, Zelda. I have got a breeding program I want to start, and I need someone with your eye for bloodlines and conformation. This is an investment in my business as much as it is help for your father." It was true, but it was also more than that, and they both knew it. Zelda's eyes went bright with unshed tears. "Thank you, Ryder. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "Shine as brightly as you can," he said softly. "That is all the repayment I need." Something shifted between them in that moment. Zelda took a step closer, and Ryder could smell the soap she used, the clean scent of her hair. For a heartbeat, he thought she might kiss him. But then one of the horses whinnied, breaking the spell, and they both stepped back, almost embarrassed. "I should check on that bay gelding," Zelda said, her voice a little unsteady. "Right. And I need to talk to Chester Mills about feed prices." They went their separate ways, but Ryder could not stop thinking about the look in her eyes, the way she had leaned toward him, the possibility that hummed in the air between them like a living thing. That afternoon, they went to the bank together. The banker, a pompous man named Gerald Frost, looked down his nose at Zelda. "And what does a laundry woman need with this much money?" "Medical expenses for her father," Ryder said sharply. "And Miss Jenkins is also my business partner. I will thank you to treat her with respect." Frost's eyebrows rose. "Business partner? That is right. She is managing my horse breeding program. Best eye for livestock I have ever seen." Zelda shot Ryder a look that was half gratitude, half panic. They had agreed she would stay hidden in town, and here he was announcing her skills to one of the biggest gossips in Las Lunas. But Ryder just smiled at her, steady and sure. "Shine," he said quietly, just for her, "as brightly as you can." Zelda took a deep breath, then turned to face Frost with her chin up and her eyes clear. "Mr. Thompson is correct. I have been studying horse breeding and behavior for years. If you know anyone who needs consultation, I would be happy to help." Frost looked like he had swallowed a lemon, but he processed the withdrawal without further comment. As they left the bank, Zelda was shaking. "I cannot believe you just did that," she said. "Did what?" Told him the truth. Told everyone. "You do realize by sunset, the whole town is going to know that the quiet laundry woman is actually working with horses." "Good. Good. Ryder, I told you I was not ready for that." He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Zelda, you are never going to be ready." There is never going to be a perfect moment when it feels safe to be yourself. At some point, you just have to decide that you are worth the risk. And you are. You are worth 1,000 risks. Her expression went soft and she reached out to touch his arm. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brilliant and kind and brave, even when you do not think you are. I know you have spent years hiding because the world told you that being smart was dangerous. But what if the world was wrong? What if the real danger is in hiding? Or what if I get hurt again? Then I will be there to make sure whoever hurts you regrets it for the rest of their miserable life. Ryder said it lightly, but there was steel underneath and Zelda heard it. You would do that, in a heartbeat. They stood there in the middle of the street, people passing around them, and Zelda realized that for the first time in 6 years, she felt safe. Not hidden, not invisible, but genuinely safe. It was a revelation, and it terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Over the next few days, the gossip spread exactly as Zelda had predicted. The other women who had employed her for laundry suddenly found excuses to talk to her, asking questions that were really just thinly veiled attempts to figure out what was going on between her and the handsome horse trader. The men were worse, either dismissive of her claims to knowledge or overly interested in a way that made her skin crawl. But Ryder was always there, a steady presence that deflected the worst of it. When rancher Tom Sullivan laughed and said women did not have the sense to judge horseflesh, Ryder coolly suggested they put it to a test. He had Zelda evaluate 3 horses Sullivan had brought to sell, and she correctly identified issues with all of them, including a subtle limp Sullivan had been trying to hide, and a mare with an untreated infection. Sullivan left town red-faced and considerably poorer, and nobody questioned Zelda's expertise after that. Thomas Jenkins was transported to the sanitarium in the foothills on a warm August morning. He was weak but lucid, and he held Zelda's hand tightly as they said goodbye. "You are blooming, daughter," he whispered. "Your mother would be so proud." "I am scared, father." "I know. But that young man, he is good for you. He sees you as you truly are. Do not let fear steal that away." Zelda kissed his forehead and promised to visit as soon as she could. As the wagon pulled away, Ryder stood beside her, and when she swayed on her feet, he put an arm around her shoulders. She let herself lean into him just for a moment, drawing strength from his solid warmth. "He will be all right," Ryder said. "You do not know that. You are right. But I have faith, and sometimes that is enough." With her father gone and the secret of her intelligence already spreading through Las Lunas, Zelda found herself standing at a crossroads. She could retreat back into invisibility, leave town, start over somewhere new, or she could stay. She could keep working with Ryder. She could let herself be seen. It was Ryder who made the decision easy. That evening, as they were closing up the corral, he said, "I have got a proposition for you." "Another one." Zelda tried to keep her tone light, but her heart was racing. "Come work for me full-time. Not just the horses here in town, but at my ranch. I've got a full breeding program I want to develop, and I need someone with your mind. I will pay you a real salary, enough to keep paying for your father's care and then some. You can live in the main house. There is plenty of room, and my housekeeper, Mrs. Garcia, lives there too, so it would be proper." Zelda stared at him. "You want me to come live at your ranch? I want you to be my partner." "In business," he added quickly, though the look in his eyes suggested he was thinking about a different kind of partnership too. "Ryder, people will talk. Let them talk. I am offering you a job, a legitimate job doing something you are brilliant at. If people want to make it into something scandalous, that is their problem, not ours. And what if I want it to be something scandalous?" The words were out before Zelda could stop them, and she felt her face go hot. Ryder went very still. "What are you saying?" Zelda gathered her courage. I am saying that you are not the only one who has noticed something happening between us. I am saying that I think about you all the time. I am saying that every morning when I come to the corral, I am not just excited about the horses. I am excited to see you. Zelda. Her name came out rough, almost pained. I know it is too fast. I know I should be more careful, but you told me to shine, Ryder. You told me to be myself. Well, this is me being myself. I like you, more than like you, and I think you feel the same way, and I am tired of pretending otherwise. For a moment, Ryder just looked at her, his eyes searching her face. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and cupped her face in his hands. I am falling in love with you, he said, his voice low and fierce. I have been falling since the moment I saw you calm that mare. But I did not want to push. I did not want you to feel obligated because I am helping with your father. I do not feel obligated. I feel lucky. Zelda put her hands over his, holding him there. I never thought I would meet someone who wanted me to be more instead of less. You make me feel like I can be everything I was meant to be. You can be. You are. And then Ryder kissed her. It was soft at first, almost tentative, as if he was afraid she might break. But Zelda had been holding herself together for so long, and in that kiss, she finally let herself fall apart in the best possible way. She kissed him back with all the pent-up longing and hope and fear she had been carrying, and Ryder caught her, held her, kissed her like she was precious and powerful and exactly right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. Come to the ranch, Zelda. Be my partner. Let me court you properly. Let me show you what it is like to be loved for exactly who you are. Yes, Zelda whispered. Yes to all of it. They stood there in the golden light of sunset, holding each other, and for the first time in years, Zelda felt hope unfurl in her chest like wings. The move to Ryder's ranch happened 2 weeks later. The ranch was beautiful, sprawling across a high valley with mountains in the distance and a river running through the property. The main house was large and comfortable, built from adobe and wood, with wide verandas and windows that let in the light. Mrs. Garcia, the housekeeper, was a plump, cheerful woman in her 50s who took one look at Zelda and declared her far too skinny. I will fatten you up, she said in heavily accented English. Mr. Ryder, he needs a woman with some meat on her bones. Zelda felt herself blush, but Ryder just laughed. Mrs. Garcia, we are business partners. C business partners. Mrs. Garcia's expression said she did not believe that for a second, and Zelda had to hide her smile. The work was everything Ryder had promised and more. He had a foundation herd of about 30 mares, all good stock, and he wanted to develop a breeding program that would produce horses known for intelligence and soundness as much as speed. It was exactly the kind of challenge Zelda's mind craved. She threw herself into it, studying pedigrees, evaluating conformation, making charts and projections that covered the walls of the small office Ryder had set up for her. They worked together every day, side by side, and their partnership deepened into something neither of them had quite expected. Ryder was easy to work with, always willing to listen to her ideas, never dismissive or condescending. He valued her opinion and sought her input on every decision. And when she got lost in her work, forgetting to eat or rest, he would gently pull her back, bringing her food or suggesting they go for a ride to clear their heads. The courting was slower, more careful, but no less intense. Ryder would take her on long rides through the valley, pointing out his favorite spots, telling her stories about his childhood in Texas. He brought her books from town, sought out journals and scientific papers he thought she would find interesting. He held her hand when they sat on the veranda in the evenings, and he kissed her good night with a tenderness that made her ache. Zelda visited her father every 2 weeks, making the journey to the sanitarium with Ryder as her escort. Thomas was improving slowly, the mountain air and rest doing what medicine could not. He approved of Ryder wholeheartedly and told Zelda she would be a fool to let this one get away. "I am not going to let him get away," Zelda assured him. "Good. Marry him, daughter. Build a life. Be happy. That is all your mother and I ever wanted for you." It was October when Ryder proposed, 3 months after they had met. They were up in the high pasture, checking on the mares and their foals. The aspens were golden, and the air was crisp and clear. Ryder had been quiet all morning, and Zelda could tell something was on his mind. "What is wrong?" she finally asked. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. That is the problem." Ryder dismounted and helped Zelda down from her horse. "I did not plan this. I was going to wait, do it proper, but I cannot hold it in any longer." "Hold what in?" Ryder took both her hands in his. "I love you, Zelda Jenkins. I love your brilliant mind and your brave heart and the way you laugh when you think no one is listening. I love how you talk to the horses like they are your friends, and I love how you fall asleep over your books in the office. I love everything about you, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Zelda felt tears prick her eyes. "Ryder, I know we have not known each other long. I know there are people who will say we are rushing, but I do not care what they say. I know what I feel, and I know what I want. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build this ranch with you, raise horses with you, maybe raise children with you if you want that. I want to watch you shine so bright that everyone for miles around can see how extraordinary you are." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was simple, a gold band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious, but to Zelda, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Marry me, Zelda. Be my wife, my partner, my everything. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to hide again." Zelda was crying openly now, but she was also smiling so hard her face hurt. "Yes, yes, of course yes." Ryder slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the horses grazed peacefully around them while they celebrated the beginning of their life together. They were married in early November in a small ceremony at the ranch. Thomas Jenkins was well enough to travel from the sanitarium to give his daughter away. Mrs. Garcia cooked enough food to feed half the territory. Ryder's family came from Texas, a whole boisterous clan of Thompsons who welcomed Zelda with open arms. His oldest sister, Ruth, pulled Zelda aside at one point and said, "I have never seen my brother this happy. Thank you for that." "I think I am the one who should be thanking him," Zelda replied. "No, it goes both ways. That is how you know it is real." The townspeople of Las Lunas came too, including Gerald Frost from the bank and Tom Sullivan. The rancher Zelda had shown up. There was still gossip, still whispers about the smart woman who had caught the handsome horse trader, but Zelda found she did not care. Let them talk. She was standing in the sunshine, wearing a simple white dress, marrying the man she loved, and that was all that mattered when the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride." Ryder pulled her close and whispered, "Shine, Mrs. Thompson, as brightly as you can," and she did. The first year of their marriage was a period of adjustment and joy in equal measure. Zelda had never lived with a man other than her father, and there were moments when she felt overwhelmed by the intimacy of sharing a life with Ryder. But he was patient and kind, giving her space when she needed it, pulling her close when she needed that instead. Their partnership, both personal and professional, flourished. The breeding program was a success, and word spread about the quality of the horses coming from the Thompson Ranch. Buyers came from all over the territory, and Zelda found herself consulted on bloodlines and conformation by ranchers and breeders, who once would have laughed at the idea of taking advice from a woman. Ryder made sure everyone knew that the success of the ranch was as much Zelda's doing as his own. He introduced her as his partner in every sense of the word, and he never let anyone dismiss or undervalue her contributions. It was a gift beyond measure, this validation, this public acknowledgement of her worth. In the spring, Zelda realized she was pregnant. She told Ryder one evening as they sat on the veranda, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of orange and pink. "I am going to have a baby," she said, her voice a mixture of wonder and fear. Ryder's face went through a series of emotions so quickly Zelda almost laughed. Shock, joy, terror, and then a happiness so profound it took her breath away. "A baby, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy, Zelda, I am over the moon. I am terrified out of my mind, but I am so happy I could burst." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "We are going to be parents." "You are going to be a wonderful father," Zelda said, and she meant it. She had seen how Ryder was with the animals, patient and gentle and firm when needed. She had watched him with his nieces and nephews when his family visited, how he listened to them, played with them, treated them like people worthy of respect. Their child would be lucky to have him, and you are going to be an amazing mother. "Our kid is going to be the smartest, most confident person in the territory, or completely overwhelmed by having two parents who expect so much. We will expect them to be themselves, that is all, just like we are ourselves." The baby, a boy they named Robert Thomas Thompson, was born in late November, just over a year after their wedding. The birth was long and difficult, and there were hours when Ryder was convinced he was going to lose Zelda. But she was strong, stronger than he had ever imagined, and when the baby finally came, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Ryder wept with relief. "He has your eyes," Zelda said, exhausted but smiling. "He has your stubbornness. He made us wait long enough." Robert was a healthy, curious baby who seemed to take in the world with wide eyes and grasping hands. Zelda discovered that motherhood was both harder and more rewarding than she had anticipated. There were sleepless nights and moments of overwhelming fear that she was doing everything wrong. But there were also quiet mornings when she would hold Robert and sing to him, and he would look up at her with such trust and love that her heart would squeeze in her chest. Ryder was a hands-on father, shocking some of the more traditional neighbors. He changed diapers and walked the floor with a fussy baby and took over night feedings when Zelda was too exhausted to function. He built a cradle with his own hands and carved little wooden horses for Robert to play with as he grew. Thomas Jenkins recovered enough to leave the sanitarium and move into a small cottage on the ranch property. He was never going to be fully well, but he was stable, and having him close was a blessing for Zelda. Robert adored his grandfather, and Thomas spent hours reading to the boy, teaching him letters and numbers as soon as he was old enough to pay attention. "You are raising a scholar," Thomas told Zelda one afternoon as they watched Ryder teach 3-year-old Robert how to approach a horse safely. "I am raising a boy who will be free to be whatever he wants to be," Zelda corrected. "If that is a scholar, wonderful. If it is a rancher or a blacksmith or an artist, that is wonderful too. I just want him to know he can shine without fear. You have built a good life here, daughter. Your mother would be so proud." 2 years after Robert was born, Zelda gave birth to twin girls, Anna and Lily. The pregnancy was a surprise, the twins even more so. Ryder was beside himself with joy and terror in equal measure. "3 children," he kept saying. "We have 3 children." "You are only just now realizing this?" Zelda asked, exhausted and amused. "I am still getting used to 1 child. 3 feels like a lot." But he rose to the challenge, as Zelda knew he would. The house was full of noise and laughter and the controlled chaos that comes with small children. Robert was a big brother who took his responsibilities seriously, always making sure his sisters had their toys and that nobody made them cry. Anna was the quiet one, content to sit with her books even as a toddler, while Lily was all energy and mischief, always getting into things she should not. The ranch continued to thrive. Zelda had developed a reputation as one of the foremost experts on horse breeding in the Southwest, and she regularly received letters from breeders asking for her advice. She even began writing articles for agricultural journals, signing them with her full name, Zelda Thompson. The first time she saw her work in print, she cried, remembering all the years she had hidden her intelligence, all the potential she had wasted. "Your mother would be proud," Ryder said, reading over her shoulder. I think she would be happy I finally found a place where I can be myself. And I am happy I found you." Ryder turned her in his arms, kissing her softly. "Every single day I thank God that I saw you with that mare and had the sense to ask you to work for me. Best decision you ever made. Second best. The best was asking you to marry me. Life was not perfect. There were hard times too. Winters that were brutal, summers that were too dry. Horses that got sick, despite their best efforts. Moments when Zelda felt overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood and work, and the constant fight to prove herself in a world that still did not always value intelligent women. Times when Ryder pushed himself too hard, trying to be everything to everyone, and Zelda had to pull him back before he burned himself out. But through it all, they had each other. They had built something real and lasting, a partnership based on respect and love and the fundamental belief that each of them was better with the other by their side. When Robert was 10, he asked his mother one day, "Why do people in town sometimes talk about you like you are strange?" Zelda considered her answer carefully. "Because I am different from what they expect. Women are not supposed to be smart or knowledgeable about things like horses and breeding programs. They are supposed to be quiet and stay in the background. That is stupid." "Yes, it is. But that is how the world works sometimes. Did you always know you were smart?" "Yes, but for a long time I tried to hide it because I thought being smart would make people not like me." "What changed?" Zelda smiled, thinking back to that day in Las Lunas when Ryder had brought his shirt to her door, when he had looked at her with those knowing eyes and seen right through her act. "Your father changed. He told me to shine as brightly as I could, and he meant it. He did not want me to be small or quiet or anything other than exactly who I was, and that gave me the courage to stop hiding." Robert thought about that for a moment. "I am glad he did, because you are the smartest person I know, and if you were hiding, we would all be missing out." Zelda pulled her son into a hug, her heart full to bursting. "You are going to be a good man, Robert Thompson. I am going to be like Dad. That is a fine goal." The years passed as years do. Robert grew into a young man who was as comfortable with books as he was with horses, who treated everyone with respect, who had inherited his mother's mind and his father's heart. The twins grew into teenagers, Anna quiet and studious, Lily loud and adventurous, both of them confident in themselves in a way Zelda had never been at their age. Thomas Jenkins passed away peacefully in his sleep when he was 72, surrounded by his family. At his funeral, Zelda read from one of her mother's favorite poems, and she talked about the legacy of love and learning her parents had given her, a legacy she was now passing on to her own children. Ryder held her hand through it all, steady and strong, the man who had changed her life by simply asking her to be herself. When Zelda was 45, she published a book on horse breeding that became a standard text in agricultural colleges across the country. The dedication read, to Ryder, who told me to shine, and to my mother, who taught me how. The book was a success, and Zelda found herself invited to speak at universities and conferences, places that once would have barred her simply because she was a woman. At one such conference in Denver, a young woman approached her nervously. "Mrs. Thompson, I just wanted to say thank you. I am studying veterinary medicine, and my professors keep telling me I should focus on something more suitable for a woman. But I read your book, and I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too." Zelda took the young woman's hands in hers. "You can do it. You can do anything you set your mind to. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, and when people try to make you small, shine anyway. Shine as brightly as you can." The young woman left with tears in her eyes and hope in her heart, and Zelda felt the circle complete. She had been given a gift by Ryder, the gift of permission to be herself, and now she was passing that gift on to the next generation. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Zelda back to the high pasture where he had proposed. The aspens were gold again, and the air was crisp and clear, just like it had been all those years ago. "I have been thinking," Ryder said as they stood looking out over the valley that had become their home. "That is usually dangerous," Zelda teased. "I have been thinking about that day when I first saw you in Las Lunas. You were trying so hard to be invisible, to make yourself small. And I remember thinking, what a waste, what a terrible waste of a bright, beautiful soul. I was scared, I know, and you had every reason to be. The world had not been kind to you. But you were kind." Zelda turned to face him fully. "You saw me, really saw me, and instead of being intimidated or trying to control me, you told me to shine. You gave me permission to be myself. Do you have any idea what a gift that was? I just did not want you to spend your life hiding, but you did the hard part, Zelda. You are the one who had the courage to step into the light. You are the one who built this life, this reputation, this legacy. I just stood beside you and cheered you on. You did more than that. You made it safe for me. You made it possible." Zelda took his hands, the same hands that had held her through childbirth and grief and triumph. "I love you, Ryder Thompson. I have loved you for 25 years, and I will love you for 25 more and 25 after that. That is a long time, not nearly long enough." They kissed there in the golden afternoon light, two people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together. The ranch continued to thrive under their management. Robert eventually took over much of the day-to-day operations, implementing his own ideas while still consulting with his parents. Anna became a teacher, running a small school on the ranch property that welcomed children from all the neighboring ranches and taught them that intelligence was a gift, not a burden. Lily married a local rancher and started her own breeding program with her mother's guidance, proving that talent skipped no generations. Zelda and Ryder grew older together, their hair going gray, their bodies slowing down, but their minds as sharp as ever. They still worked together every day, still sat on the veranda every evening, still held hands like newlyweds. Their love had not dimmed with time. If anything, it had grown deeper, richer, more essential. When Zelda was 60, she was invited to speak at a women's college in the East. Ryder accompanied her, and as he watched her address a room full of young women, telling them to embrace their intelligence, to refuse to be diminished, to shine as brightly as they could, he felt a satisfaction so complete it was almost painful. This was what he had wanted, all those years ago when he had seen a scared woman hiding her talents. He had wanted her to be free, to be seen, to be celebrated, and she was. After the speech, as they walked through the college grounds, Zelda said, "I could not have done this without you, you know." "You could have. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for, maybe. But it would have been a lot harder and a lot lonelier. You gave me a safe place to land, Ryder. You gave me a home. We gave each other a home. Ryder stopped walking and turned to face her. You made me better, Zelda. You challenged me, inspired me, made me think about things I never would have considered. You were not just my wife. You were my partner, my best friend, my everything. I am the lucky one. They stood there, two people who had lived a lifetime together, and Zelda thought about that frightened girl in Las Lunas, hiding behind laundry and downcast eyes. She would never have believed that this life was possible, this love, this joy, this freedom to be exactly who she was meant to be. But it was possible. It was real. And it had all started with a cowboy who looked at her and saw light where others saw only something to dim. The years continued to pass, gentle and sweet. Robert married a kind woman who loved the ranch as much as he did, and they gave Zelda and Ryder 4 grandchildren who filled the house with noise and laughter once again. Anna's school grew, becoming known throughout the territory as a place where children were encouraged to think, to question, to excel. Lily's breeding program produced some of the finest horses in the Southwest, and she made sure everyone knew she had learned from the best. Zelda published 2 more books, both of which were widely read and respected. She continued to mentor young women who reached out to her, and she made it her mission to ensure that the next generation would not have to hide their talents the way she once had. Ryder remained her constant companion, her greatest supporter, her love. When arthritis made it hard for him to work with the horses, Zelda was there, adjusting their roles as easily as they had always adjusted to life's challenges. When her eyesight began to fail, making it difficult to write and read, Ryder read to her every evening, his voice as soothing as it had been when he read to their children decades before. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch. Children and grandchildren, friends and neighbors, all came to celebrate the love story that had become legend in that part of New Mexico. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and speeches that made both Zelda and Ryder cry happy tears. Robert stood up at one point and addressed the crowd. My parents taught me something important. They taught me that love is not about making someone fit into a box. It is about giving them room to grow, to shine, to be everything they are meant to be. My father saw my mother's light when she was hiding it, and instead of trying to control it or dim it, he told her to let it shine. And my mother trusted him enough to do exactly that. That is what real love looks like. Later, when the party had wound down and it was just the 2 of them sitting on the veranda in their favorite chairs, Zelda reached over and took Ryder's hand. 50 years, she said softly. Can you believe it? Feels like 50 days and 50 lifetimes all at once. You have any regrets? Ryder turned to look at her, and even after all these years, his eyes still held that same warmth, that same certainty that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. Not a single one. You? None. Well, maybe one. I wish I had been brave enough to shine sooner. I wish I had not spent so many years hiding. You were brave when you needed to be, and you have spent the last 50 years making up for it. You have touched so many lives, Zelda. You have changed so many minds. That scared girl in Las Lunas would be amazed at what you have become. That scared girl found a man who loved her enough to help her become brave. That is what I would tell her if I could go back. That she does not have to do it alone. That the right person will see her for who she really is and love her for it. And the right person was a stubborn cowboy who could not mind his own business. Zelda laughed. The right person was a stubborn cowboy who saw potential and refused to let it go to waste. Thank you, Ryder, for everything, for seeing me, for loving me, for building this life with me. Thank you for trusting me, for taking that leap of faith, for shining so brightly that you lit up not just your own life, but mine and our children's and everyone you have ever touched. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the mountains they had called home for 5 decades. The ranch was quiet now, the day's festivities over, but the house was full of their family, their legacy. Children and grandchildren sleeping in the rooms they had prepared, carrying on the tradition of love and acceptance and encouragement that Zelda and Ryder had started all those years ago. Zelda thought about the journey she had taken, from hiding in the shadows to standing in the sun. It had not always been easy. There had been setbacks and heartaches, moments when she had questioned whether it was worth it to keep fighting for recognition in a world that did not always want to give it. But every time she had faltered, Ryder had been there, steady and sure, reminding her of her own worth. And in turn, she had reminded him of his, because that was what love did. It held up a mirror and showed you the best version of yourself, then loved you through the process of becoming that person. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Zelda squeezed Ryder's hand. "I love you," she said. Words she had spoken thousands of times, but that never lost their meaning. "I love you," Ryder replied, and in those 3 words was a lifetime of devotion, partnership, and joy. They sat there together, 2 people who had defied the expectations of their time, who had built a life based on mutual respect and genuine love, who had proven that when you give someone permission to shine, they will light up the world. And as the night settled over the ranch, Zelda Jenkins Thompson, who had once hidden her talents to avoid attention, felt nothing but gratitude for the cowboy who had told her to shine as brightly as she could, and for the courage she had found to do exactly that.